Thank you very much. Good morning. Good morning. We need more energy. So as mentioned by Richard, that WWF is very honorable to be on behalf of Fashion Summit to conduct a survey on all the designers across the world to understand their insights during COVID, as well as their thought ongoing after the COVID outbreak. Why do we want to have such a survey? Why do we want to know about designers' mindset? The reason is there are already a lot of different researches on corporate CEOs, on manufacturing supply chain, and we find this is missing in the fashion industry, that we need to hear the voice from the fashion designers. Fashion designers train up, they have design thinking, and then it's part of the problem-solving skills. So we believe their skills can help us to go forward to a green recovery. More to that, fashion designers are also known to be very capable of trend setting and bring up new styles. So we really want to hear from them and give us some tips how we can shape sustainability to be the next trend, to be more stylish, so that more people will join us on the sustainability journey. So with that as a background of the survey, I would like to share with you our findings and some of the insights that we draw from their response. So as I mentioned, the survey covered across the group, and we are very fortunate that there are designers from 5 different continents responding to our online survey in earlier part of the year in May and June. All the respondents number is about over 60, and then you can see majority of them is from Hong Kong. And we do have very supportive organizations to help us reach out to respective regions' designers. So in terms of experience of the designer, it's very well balanced. You can see we have respondents from designers with less than 1 year. And at the same time, we have also many responses for designers with over 20 years. So we believe the response is of a balanced view, and then we will take their advice and take their insights into our analysis. Concerning about the business size, most of the designers are running a micro businesses, employing only 1 to 4 employees. And majority of them are company owners or they are sole proprietor. In terms of their main duties, you can see that they are not only doing fashion design, but actually they are doing all the administrations, management, sourcing materials, so really an all-rounder. So their works will be very insightful because they are also running a business and with a designer's mindset. So the key insight of this chart, I want to share with you more from regions to regions. We're based in Hong Kong, so I'd like to talk more on the Hong Kong's response first. And you can see that the Hong Kong designer rate biodiversity loss not an issue. And Hong Kong designers also think their customers rate sustainability lower than the other regions. For Asia, we have response from China, India, Japan, Taiwan, Thailand, and UAE. And we group their insights as they see welfare and living wages worsened. And they believe they were likely to hire additional designers. And they also see is higher cost of sustainable alternatives. For Oceania, mainly Australia, they rate the progress in achieving SDG lower than the other region. They seem to have more work coming in, but employment rate is worsened. And then they have their ability to source is also affected. For Europe, designers see lower new opportunities. They rate water pollution as a very serious issue, but at the same time, they feel less hindrance in adopting sustainability practices. For Africa, it's quite a little bit different from the other regions. They see community investment and anti-corruption on an improving trend since the COVID-19 outbreak. And finally, for the Americans, they see most of the new opportunity emerge. They rate soil degradations, desertifications, or waste accumulation not unusual. So these are the insights from designers across the group. With that, we deep dive into the business prosperity. We have a question asking the designers how they operate their businesses pre-COVID and how they operate their business after COVID. And this chart shows you whether there's any change in using different channels. And the top table you can see is the responses from the Hong Kong designers. I want to draw your attention to point A and point D, which is the online channels. Designers from Hong Kong, although there is not a significant change in using online direct sales to end user, but it's already in a very high percentage. 72% of them are adopting or already deploying these channels. And then on point D, which is the using third-party online platform, it increased a little bit. It increased from 44% to 48%. While on the overseas designers, again, you see that there is a big increase in using online platform to meet with their end users. It increased from 62% to 72%, so an 11-point increase. And then for point D, which is using the third-party online platform, again, there is a significant increase. There is 24-point increase from 19 to 43%. So we can clearly see that their business operations has been changed, and they kind of increased use of online platform. After knowing about their business operations, we'd like to hear from them whether there is any changes in terms of the COVID outbreak, how they feel about the financial impact due to this COVID outbreak. And at the same time, what's their views on their businesses in the coming year when compared back with 2020. So you'll find on the top pie charts showing different regions. And then the pink one actually are respondents telling us that there is either no influence on their financial impact, or they have even increased a little bit in the revenue after the COVID outbreak. And then the brown one shows you those, I call it strugglers, is with response that their businesses has been dropped, whether it's from 10% to up to more than 50%. And then the gray one, I call it unsure, which are responses that, okay, there may be some decrease, but I don't know the percentage, or they're really not sure about the financial impact to their business. So you'll see that for Hong Kong, there is about 4% of designers indicating that they are really starved, their business is not affected. And then for the regions in Asia and Oceania, it's around slightly over 20% star respondent. And then you see that there is a high percentage in Europe telling us that their business is not infected. Americas is not sure, and then Africa's is not sure. With that in mind, we also like to ask their views on the upcoming years, like their business in 2022, will it be better than in the past year? And in the lower part of the chart, you see the bar charts. And I want to draw your attention to the blue and the orange one, which is the first and the second bar, indicating that respondents answers either their business will be significantly or slightly increased. And you see that across all the regions, designers are very optimistic that they expect there will be an increase. Either this slightly increased or it's significantly increased. Then we also like to hear the designers' views on environmental and social aspects. So on the tables with pink colors, we are asking them how they feel about the impact of fashions on different environmental impact. We ask them to rate 1 if they think it's not an issue, and then we ask them to rate 6 if they think it's extremely serious. And you see that on the lower part of the table, which include soil degradations, desertifications, rainforest destructions, and biodiversity loss. These are the 3 items or areas that designers think is not so an issue. They rate it only 4 when compared with the others on the top of the tables, which include water pollutions, water consumptions, or microplastics. On the social aspect, which show on the tables with blue colors, again, we asked the designers if they feel there is any changes in the social aspects due to COVID outbreak. And you see that in this chart, they are very much similar, only that in terms of employment rate, as well as the welfare and living wages, which is seriously affected and is lower in terms of ranking. It's close to 2 or slightly over 2, which show a deteriorating sign. And then these questions actually, again, they rate from 1 to 6, and the 6 will be improving. And we also identified top 3 of the areas that they see improving. The first one is about health and safety. The second one is about supply chain transparency. And then the third one is actually the product responsibility and traceability. So these are the 3 areas that they feel like after the COVID outbreak, it's improving. So much on the data. We also asked one open-end or qualitative questions. We asked the designer how design or how their work can actually contribute to support the visions of people and natures can thrive together. And you see from this wordsmith that bigger words means that more designers has used this word or vote for these works. And we see here sustainable, natural products, design, product life, or environment pollution. So these are some of the keywords that we identify from the designer when we ask whether your work can help the planet and people thrive together. So this chart is, again, a very interesting chart. We want to understand designers' views on sustainability from the angle of their customer. On the vertical axis, we ask the designers to rate their views, how their customers think about sustainability, 0 being the lowest, and then 10 being the highest. And on the horizontal line is about the experience the designer have. So the respondent among them, they have less than 1 year, and then all the way up to over 20 years. We also like to analyze whether there will be any different views between younger designers and the more mature one. And then the color of the boards shows different regions. The green one is actually Hong Kong, and then the others are indicated, like Asia is indicated in red, Europe is indicated in blue, Africa is indicated in purple. So you'll see that across the group, no matter how experienced the designers are, we find them that the rating is much lower than the other regions. So this is an area that we'd like to explore more when my panel guests come on the stage. The Hong Kong designer feel like the customers do not rate sustainability, do not design for sustainability. And then this is the chart, again, to understand their views on the United Nations 17 Sustainability Development Goals. We know that this is a big goal, and then we all like to support it and have it achieved by 2030. And then you'll see from this chart, actually, when we look at the boards on the right-hand side, the bigger the boards, the more designers work for it. The vertical axis is like designers think if this SDG is achieved, there will be a big impact. And then the horizontal lines shows you designers think the likeliness of achieving these goals. And you'll see that majority of designers vote for climate change, which is SDG 13, the green one on the top. And they think if this SDG is achieved, there will be big impact. However, when we ask them whether they think this SDG is likely to be achieved, it's just on an average. It's not very, very sure or not very, very certain. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see on the lower part, there is a big one in purple color. This is actually SDG 17, which is partnership. So a lot of designers think that partnership is likely to be achieved. However, even if this SDG is achieved, the significance or the impact they feel is not very high. It's lower than the average. And I also want to draw your attention to the two boards, the green one and the blue one, on the left lower part. They are actually SDG 14 and SDG 15, which is actually life on land and life underwater. So they rated these two SDG not very likely to be achieved. And even if it's achieved, the significance or the impact will not be big. So if we want to analyze across different regions, how designer across different regions feels the overall progress of SDG, you can see from the left-hand side, the Hong Kong designer rate the average as 5.3. And then the Asia designer rated as 6.1. Oceania rated 4.3, which is among the lowest. European designers rated 5.4, Americans designer rated 5, and Africans designers rated 6.5. So these are the findings and insights that we draw from the respondents. And with that, I would like to actually, oh, sorry, I still have one chart. Right. This one is actually my favorite chart. I like to use traffic light. And then the indications of this traffic light is like the red one is of lower volt. We asked designers to pick 5 out of the 17 SDGs that they like to feel they can contribute to achieve it. And then the red one is less than 2 volts from the designers. The yellow one is from 3 to 10, and then the green one is more than 11 volts among the designers. And then this is very consistent with the previous chart. Actually, SDG 14 and 15 are also on the red part, while on the green one, which designer thinks that they can contribute a lot to achieve it, include SDG 12, which is the responsible production and consumption, SDG 8, which is decent work, and then SDG 5, which is gender equality. So these are the findings from the designers, and then top-line insights. And with that as a background information, I'd like to invite my panel speakers on stage, and we'll run discussions with them to further explore why these kind of results or findings from designers over different regions. And at the same time, they would also share with us their understanding or their journey towards sustainability. So I'd like to invite Alison Gwilt online, joining us from Australia. Hi, Alison. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. Can you hear us well?
I can. Thank you, Karen. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you so much. Then in person here in the hall, we have Aurelie from DORINA. Aurelie, please. We also have independent designer Vincent Lee. Vincent. And we also have Thomas Wong, which is an expert on SDGs. So he'll be able to share with us his insights and to explain some of the survey's findings. Thank you so much. So I know you well, but I guess for the privilege of the audience, we'd like you to introduce yourself and to share your experience with the audience so that they understand you more, and then our discussions can be more fruitful upon forward. So Alison, why don't you start first? Would you introduce yourself, your experience, as well as your current work?
Thank you, Karen. Yes, so my name's Alison Gwilt, and I'm an associate professor in design at the University of New South Wales in Sydney. I'm an author and editor of a number of books that explore fashion and sustainability. My most recent books include the second edition of A Practical Guide to Sustainable Fashion, and I think some of you may have seen this book. It's a tool, really, to support designers and product developers engage with sustainable strategies in the design phase. And I'm really pleased to say in this second edition, we've got some great, insightful and inspiring interviews with design leaders. I'm also the editor on Global Perspectives of Sustainable Fashion. And this text examines fashion in the context of local, cultural and environmental concerns in 6 global regions. And we were really fortunate to include contributions from Gloria Wong and Benny Ding Leong at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, and Anne Pearson-Smith from the City University of Hong Kong too. So that was wonderful to get their contributions. My own research work is really focused on examining design's contribution to a responsible fashion industry. And I'm particularly interested in how we can keep garments and clothing materials in circulation for longer. So, for example, I examined the clothing care and maintenance practices that people employ at home and the design approaches we can employ in the industry to help clothing users keep their garments in active use for as long as possible. I'm also really keen to understand why we wear some garments all the time and what it is that people do to extend their life of their actively worn garments, because I feel this insight could provide designers with knowledge that can improve the creation of more relevant products, which I think means that people are happy to keep and maintain. So currently I'm working on the manuscript for a new book with Associate Professor Alice Payne at the Queensland University of Technology, and we're examining how the repair, refurbishment and remanufacturing of clothes can extend the life of our textile materials and delay recycling. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Alison. The next, I would like Aurelie to introduce yourself. Do you want to use the clicker?
I think someone is just going to put one slide.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Aurelie. I'm from France, and I've been living in Hong Kong for over almost 16 years. I've been working for Upland Company since then. I started as a designer, working for different brands in underwear, such as Primark, Uncomoller, CNA, or Carrefour. So all mainly based in Europe. And then 5 years ago, Upland bought over DORINA brand, which used to be owned by Triumph. And since then, I became design manager, and I'm working for the different categories of lingerie, loungewear, swimwear, sportswear, and panties as well. So I love, on a personal life, I love fitness. I love everything about nutrition, everything about holistic life, just being more close to nature. And I even last year, during the semi-lockdown, I was so sick of throwing disposable mask that I decided to do my own. So I've made many colors in order to fit my outfit, and yes, so that's a little part of me.
Thank you. Vincent, you'd like to introduce yourself?
My name is Vincent. So I started my brands about 2014. So I originally is living in Melbourne, Australia. When I started as childhood, I was a trained dancer. But I was later on entering into a different field, which is working as IT field as a business consultant. So 10 years ago, I decided to change my career because I found my passion in fashions. So Vincent Lee was, when we established it, it's an unconventional kind of menswear. So it had unisex styles. So we wanted to bring a kind of storytelling through our fashion. We use it as a kind of vehicle to connect with people with deep emotions. This is a little clip if you wanted to play.
You want to play this video?
Yes.
Okay.
It's very hard for me to kind of describe in a simple word, fashion. But fashion for me is a way to challenging people's mindset, to come across certain messages as well. So it's quite complex. It's not just clothing. It's the thought, it's the idea behind it. It's how you present it, and also how you balance it. Vincent Lee menswear is kind of alternative menswear. So it suits men and women both. I like to design them and present them in a very abstract way. I dislike anything literal. too obvious, it's not very interesting. I try to innovate the silhouette for the menswear and also add a bit of colors and prints into the design. It mainly reflected my cultural background, which is East Asian philosophy. It's very connected with the feeling and the emotions. So it's quite a intangible kind of subtle things. So I like that and get into what's the human condition. I think that's the feeling I will try to translate into my design and let my customers feel.
Okay, thank you. Thomas, you'd like to introduce yourself? I see you have a big bio, so you must share with us your experience in the sustainability.
Okay. Thank you, Karen. My name is Wong, Thomas C.C. Wong. I have experience in garment manufacturing, operating factories for over 30 years. And a few years back, I asked myself a question. If I continue to do what I have been doing, would I be able to give a better world to the future generations? And the answer is very obvious. If we don't change our behavior, if we don't change our mindset, we cannot give a better world to our future generations. And more or less around that time, 2015, September, the United Nations adopted the 17 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. I see that. When I saw that, I think this is the answer. So that's why I concentrate more on sustainability. And because sustainability is such a wide and big topic, I focus more on ABI, animal-based industries. So in animal fiber, we are talking about wool, leather, fur, silk. And in the food industry, I will be looking at meat or even entertainment industry that use animals, like horse racing, marinas park, ocean park, or even pet industries. Since I'm interested in ABI, animal-based industries, naturally I will be going into ethics or animal ethics. So, but always start with sustainability, but with some focuses. So that is all about me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. With that, I'd like to follow up the questions to you. How do you think design can contribute to rebuilding a green economy?
Okay, I think the challenges is this. Most of the designers, they would take things for granted. They take fresh air for granted. They take clean water for granted. They take stable food supply for granted. But if they don't put all these elements into the equation, the design won't be able to generate a sustainable fashion or sustainable product. I'll give you an example. For example, if I pack things for my trips, I have to know where the destination is. If I'm going to Hawaii, the things I pack will be different from if my destination is New York in winter. But now the big challenge is the future is uncertain. The future is uncertain. So what I'm saying is, how do we design for the future when the future we design for might not exist? Thank you.
So it's a very philosophical question, but it's definitely a very important one. So Alison, you want to share with us your views?
Thank you, Karen. And yes, some good points there, Thomas. I can't disagree with any of that, actually. But looking at the sort of what's been happening recently with the COVID situation, of course, it's been an incredibly difficult time for the sector. But I think we have seen quite a great deal of resilience and agility from design brands and retailers. So particularly micro and small-sized brands have really learnt how to adapt to a constantly changing situation. And as we come out of the pandemic, I've noticed that many fashion brands are easing people back into work with clothes that are comfortable and fashionable, which I think is great news for clothing users. we often hear that people stop wearing and they discard clothes because they no longer fit. And I think comfort is a factor in that, actually. Also, we've seen clothing companies diversify. I think they've now making much wider range of products, specifically in response to demand, of course. So, for example, face masks or hospital gowns. And I think this really gives confidence to designers and brands that they can explore other business opportunities, which I'm hoping, and I think many of us do hope, this leads to a positive step towards a more responsible industry.
Thank you, Alison. What ideas or strategies or recommendations do you have that could support and assist you to recover from the impact and changes resulting from COVID? So perhaps, Vincent, you can share with us your views.
So we made, first of all, we made some smart editor and produced mindfully with a smaller SKU for each collection. Our design is seasonal and transitional. We don't follow the trend so much. So opting for less is more approach. So when we look at our design, we wanted to design the style, the pieces can be styled in the various ways for different occasions. So reflect on this mindset. Like a current collection, we have this kind of loungewear silhouette, which because of a lot of more people stay at home more often. So we had an original plan to expanding our presence in mainland China market in 2020. When the global pandemic started, the Fashion Week was canceled and moved to virtual format. And the travel becoming impossible, and the plan to venture into China mainland market has put on hold. So less of the incomes people feeling, and also make ends meet become very real for lots of people. So the first thing we try to address is to unlock the new pocket of demand and tailor the assortment to attract local customer. So we kind of cemented the stock list in some center shopping areas such as TST and Causeway Bay. And then the pandemic has accelerated the changes in retail. So now you have to start standing out in retail. You need to do a lot more than just selling clothing. So when we're participating in Causeway Bay pop-up store, we're trying to open a dialogue with our customer and engage with them by hosting like exhibitions, live performance, or to a live stream event to develop that kind of customer journey. Another thing is, I think, is we have to tackle is logistic. Because we kind of decided to filter out the spending on off-trade trade shows and also reduce our production volume. We work close with Hong Kong and mainland China production sources for solutions. Besides the numbers, we see the ethical aspect of the business is of a concern. So, and it is only during this unprecedented time that all identity have allowance to reflect on this flaw as a business. We see our responsibility to engage with suppliers to govern the welfare of the employees. Finally, there's a digital space. I think all the brands are confronted by. We are in discussion of investing on upgrading our e-commerce site to make it more easy to navigate, but also more emphasis on storytelling through the interactive visual. So we hire a communication specialist, and we hoped with more kind of a marketing support, we can use our channel to connect with shoppers on a more profound level. that is created more kind of their senses, because the sensory experience is extremely for our brand, as Vincent Lee is termed with deep emotions. So that's one.
I think it's very good sharing, especially with all the independent designers who may not be so resourceful, and it's good strategies to really come up with the situations. So Alison, do you have any comments or how designers in Australia can cope with any smart strategies?
I think Vincent really outlined quite a lot of what I was going to say, in the sense that I think all brands at the moment and small design companies should be, and probably have been, reflecting on their day-to-day business, as we've gone through such a stage of constant flux. I mean, it's constantly changing. And I think while people are doing that, it would be really useful to then start thinking, well, you know, what sustainable strategies or circular principles could I then bring into my business? I think it's a good time to start asking those questions. Clearly, as Vincent pointed out, there's, you know, ongoing supply chain problems, and they are starting to lead designers and brands to question whether they can bring production on shore, and it's something that's been happening here in Australia. While it's really complex to do, and we all recognise how integrated that sort of global supply chain is, while it's complex to do, even considering onshore production actually could be helping brands and designers realise who their customers are. I think they're much more in touch with who their customers are and what their needs might be in the future. So, and, you know, as Vincent quite rightly pointed out, if you're a micro or you're a small business, you know, you can do some of those changes relatively quickly and relatively easily.
Thank you very much, Alison. Yes, independent designer could make a quicker move, but at the same time, I'd like to ask Aurelie. She works for a company. I'd like to see how do you take actions to restore the health? Do you feel like you have all your authority or freedoms to do so, or you are bounded by the company?
Yeah. So at DORINA, we have started our sustainable journey probably in 2018, where we, of course, starting to source recycled material, but also all our packaging are 100% eco, so which means our hangers are coming directly from 100% recycled plastic. Our polybag are 100% biodegradable, and our carton, like shipping box, are also recycled and reusable. And also another thing that we, as a strategy, as an underwear company, back in 2018, we launched period panties for women, which is something that we need to remember. As a woman, over 11,000 disposable hygiene products in her lifetime will be used. So it's quite significant, and that's why we decided to create period panties with inserted pad, which is not only we're using recycled material, such as organic cotton or recycled polyester, and also it's good for the environment. So, yeah.
Thank you for the sharing. It's very supportive from the company, and at the same time, you have the initiative of using the recycled materials.
Yes.
So talking about sustainable materials, is it only the recycled material considered as a sustainable one? Or is there other definitions of sustainable materials? So Thomas, perhaps you can share with us your views on this the definitions of sustainable materials.
Thank you, Karen. When we talk about sustainable material, I think most people think of organic, natural, biodegradable, minimal waste. I mean, all these are correct, and all these are very important. But if we look at all of them, actually all of them focus on one area, and that is environmental protection. When we are talking about sustainability, we also have to look at social inclusion and economic development. So not just environmental protection, although it is very important. We have to find a balance between all these three. For example, we know that sometimes maybe it's cheaper and better to make the garments in a developed country because they have better machines, because they have better logistics, because of the raw materials near to the factory. But if we do that, how about the, for example, in the developing countries, Bangladesh, how about this lady worker who get wages and use them to put food on the table? If we just look at environmental protection, we might end up making that piece of garment in developed countries. And to me, that is a sustainable material. We have to take into the balance and with economic development, with social inclusion, as well as environmental protection. And there's another thing, Karen. When we are talking about design for the future, I think it's important to understand that designs are very difficult and actually very challenging for designers because they are facing moving targets. And not only that, there are multiple targets. To give you an example, for example, if I hire an interior designer for my home, I might tell the designer that I want a comfortable home. But after that, I will tell him that actually, I want you to do it within my budget. And after that, I will tell him that I want you to do it within my time frame, 3 months, 6 months. So the target is moving. Not only that, there are multiple targets. And the pressure is getting more and more. To give another example, in the fashion industry, John Galliano, in the mid-'80s, when he started, he only designed 2 collections a year. And before he passed away, he was talking about 32 collections in a year. I mean, look at that type of pressure. So that is the challenges of design. So we have to really find a balance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's so true. Vincent, you are in the industry. Do you face the same challenges? And how do you define sustainable materials? So when you design the collections, do you first define this sustainable materials, then you have the inspirations to work on it, or is the other way around?
I think since the beginning of the brand, we are all looking at the sustainable materials, but the availability of sustainable material and the choice of commercial use of sustainable materials are minimal. It's bring a challenge to our designs constantly. And also with credential, there's a lack of international framework that point a small business to the benchmark, because a lot of the established scheme and credential is established against the poor practice in the chain of major business company, but they are not relevant to a small company. And we have to balance our vision and creation with sustainable material, because we don't want to compensate with the authenticity and the soul of the brand itself. And for Vincent Lee, the prints are the heart of our brand. So we illustrate and digitalize them in-house. It always has been a gruesome process to source a digital printer that abide by sustainable code. And eventually we find Think Positive Design Studio through Umark. Think Positive, basically they are kind of like international renowned innovator in the direct digital to fabric kind of printing. And they established in Sydney and has more than 30 years history. They developed a technique which allows the smaller length of fabric and a lengthening demand of water, chemical use, and textile waste. So their ink was used as water solute and environmental friendly dye, and the excess dye is recycled. And also they had a range of natural fiber and sustainable material. But the downfall side with single positive is it's expensive. Although they don't have a minimum order, which is much more flexible when we're doing design, we don't have to have a lot of waste in fabric. By knowing the limitation with them is the head cost and the leading time, because when we're doing SS22, the Sydney has locked down and the border control in Australia, it's already 2.5 months, almost 3 months, we haven't received our orders. So we have to find an alternative to, in China, work with viable and sustainable supplies, but there's still a lot of hurdles in the process. So the problem with China, mainland China, is the minimum quantity is higher, which hinders the collection as a whole.
I hear that high cost availability could be some of the hurdles or some of the burdens. So maybe Aurelie, when you try to identify or use sustainable materials, how are you going to assess it? Do you encounter any problems or burdens in assessing sustainable materials?
I would say that 3 years ago it was quite a struggle because the suppliers were having like not much choice in terms of selection, so it was difficult as a designer to be like innovative. Also in terms of pricing, it was quite high, but I've seen in the past 3 years it's become more and more common, so it's better because we also can see it in our collection. We started with like a small capsule collection of 10% using recycled material, and now we're over 60% of our collection and aiming for SS23 to be 100%. But I feel like in my field, the struggle is still around the small accessories, like such as elastic, cup, wires. This is still a difficult part to be recycled. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but it's still really high price and we can't afford to put that in our garment. So I would say this is one of the struggles that we're still having. And also as an underwear company, for us it is impossible to do return chain. So such as Zara or H&M have started to take back samples from before, like for underwear garment, it's something that it's impossible to do. So that's struggle. Yeah.
Right. So Alison, we see in the survey findings that Australians, a designer, said that basically it's quite difficult to get sustainable alternatives. So could you share with us a reason why, and then is there any ways to resolve the issue?
And so this is about Australia, Karen, and how we can minimise the burden in our country?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just listening really carefully to what was being said by Aurelie then and Vincent, actually. It's just, there's a few key common points there. And that's about particularly around availability of materials. And also, I would say, when you're a micro or small enterprise, you know, the requirements to buy large amounts of, you know, large volumes of stock makes it impossible for micro and small companies to actually buy fabrics, let alone sustainable fabrics. So I think those are common problems around the globe, actually. I would say that the other thing I do want to tap into is that it's really difficult to define what a sustainable material is. And I think one of the best ways forward that I've seen and that makes it easy for designers and product developers is to actually make use of those, I would call them third-party organisations, these sort of, you know, special sustainable fabric sourcing events. So in Australia, we have an organisation called Raw Assembly, and they do a great job informing designers on new developments and exposing them to international and local fabric supplies. So, you know, I think there are models like that work really well. In Australia, though, at the moment, there's a real buzz around the concept of reviving local manufacturing. And I take on board completely the comments that Thomas said earlier, which I think demonstrates, the real problem with that global supply chain. I mean, look at the problems we have to try and resolve. If we were to bring manufacturing back on shore in most countries, it would be incredibly difficult. It's difficult in places like Australia because we don't have the skilled labour and we don't have the manufacturing facilities. So, there are some big problems for us to face there. The other thing is in our sector in Australia, we're noticing that the statistics for employment and particularly the projected statistics, they've been on a downward trend since 2000. So, we are seeing less people employed in our sector in Australia for quite some time. The other thing on fabrics, though, that I do want to say is that Australia relies on the importation of most of its fabrics and fibres in fashion manufacturing, and I just don't see that changing anytime soon. But we do have a really strong technical textiles industry, and recently an Australian company called Blocktex announced that they're building the first textile recycling facility, which will divert around 4,000 tonnes of textiles from landfill in its first year. So, this is quite a new innovation to be happening in a country the size of Australia. But, initially that creates 30 new full-time jobs and, it raises up to 43 million in economic impact to the local area in Queensland. So, preparing or planning ahead for that sort of responsible fashion industry is something that all nations need to be doing. And, the example that we're seeing here from Blocktex is just one of first that I think we're going to see in the future.
So thank you for sharing. It's really encouraging to see such a movement. Perhaps we would really like that happened in Hong Kong also. So apart from sustainable materials, I do like to ask my guest speaker here, any other sustainable practices that you feel like we can adopt for the industry? So maybe Thomas, you can start first.
To me, like Alison just mentioned, that it is challenging sometimes to identify which material is sustainable. So to me, the answer is just one word, and that is transparency. What that means is if the companies, whether they are material suppliers or garment manufacturers, if they put all the data in a public domain, people can see and people can make the judgment. What I mean is this, for example, the important thing to understand is this: every individual has a different priority. For example, for Karen, maybe you value carbon footprint more important. For Vincent, maybe he thinks the landfill, or the quantity of going to the landfill is more important. To me, maybe I think the fair wages, gender equality is more important. But we don't know which company fit in our category. But if they put all this data in the public domain, I can guarantee you very soon there will be a new app that can help us to identify. For example, I will put in my priorities, and then I will use the app to look at the different companies. And he will tell me, well, company A and B fit in my preference. And then I would go and buy from company A and B. If everybody do that, actually, the consumers speaks, and they will have impact. And if many people take sustainability more seriously, then the company that pay attention to sustainability would be getting a lot of the business. And this would motivate the company to do more on sustainability. So that's why I think transparency is very, very important.
Yeah, we also find from the survey that people feels like product transparency and traceability will be improving point forward. And I really like your ideas, having this platform, getting all the suppliers, and then have transparency on which SDG goals they're supporting and how environmentally friendly or social inclusions that their company are and at what stages. So I guess CETA may think of submitting a proposal to create Hong Kong, or to Edward Yao building up this platform for the Hong Kong designer. It will be a billion projects and help the designers a lot. So before that initiative or projects come into truth, I'd like to also ask Aurelie if you have any other thinking on what sustainable practices or initiative beyond sustainable materials that we designers can adopt.
So me, I'm going to share what we are actually doing in the office on a daily basis at the moment, and that we started to do. So basically, when we do presentation, we used to print a lot of things. So it's something that we're trying to avoid now, so to reduce the paper waste. So we do everything on projector and just like digital only presentation. We also try to avoid too many sample making under the development stage. So instead trying to do some mock-up or just some lab dip just to approve instead of making sample. And between colleagues, we are starting to do some challenges like what we call Green Monday. So basically we eat vegetarian on Mondays, and we challenge each other to follow that. We also have a corner in the office where we have we can drop clothing, home decor, anything that we don't want anymore, and maybe another colleague will be happy to have that. We also, what else do we do? Forgot. Yeah, we're doing a few little things like that, and yeah, so that's something. Oh yeah, and another thing is trying to avoid to take away lunch boxes. So we try to bring our lunch box and coffee cup or things like that. And also on a personal side, like trying to avoid buying water bottles, going with our tote bag for grocery shopping, this kind of thing, like we're starting to do, yeah.
Each of the things seems to be small, but I guess if every one of us can practice the same, exactly, and then we do it day after day after day, collectively we can really make a very big impact.
Yes.
I do believe so. And then, Vincent, you have any things to add on that?
I think as a brand, we needed to engage a conversation with the customer about the sustainability, because the root of the problem lies in the excessive consumerism. And also, this first step is to build awareness and a willingness to change. And for a small brand, we can go forward with concepts like providing new services, such as renting, repairing, purchase, repurpose customers' wardrobe. And besides the product, I think the packaging and the delivering of the product has its impact on the carbon footprint. So the customer should be offered an option of offset the carbon with each transactions. But also sustainability is correlated with moral and ethical aspect of the business. So we're trying to giving back to the community by working with local Hong Kong factories, for example, even for part of our productions.
It's really a big idea. Imagine that every transactions, whether it's online or offline, the retailer or the brand owners can help us to offset all our carbon. And then that will be accumulative to quite a sizable amount of money. And then we also channel back this money into building up the communities, or channeling it back to protecting the environment, or any initiatives that will help us build our sustainability of the community. That will be really, really a very good initiative. So Alison, you like to share with us some of the practices that you have on a daily basis to support sustainability?
Yes, actually, Karen, I'm sort of leading textiles or textile design at UNSW, and we took the decision to actually completely stock our studio with equipment that will help textile designers and textile students and researchers remanufacture existing waste. So everything that we have in terms of equipment is really to support people reuse all sorts of different materials from not only recycling textile waste, but of course working with plant-based materials and existing waste from unusual areas such as paper and cardboard and plastics, for example. But yeah, that's been our real focus, is to try and educate particularly the students of the future in the idea that resources are valuable and they can be reused. And I'd recommend that for especially small studios, and there are lots of small studios working like this in terms of making fashion clothes, but I'd like to see more of this going on in terms of textiles and textile manufacture, actually, which of course there are some very big projects going on in that area, but it's especially interesting to look at this in terms of a textile design challenge.
Karen,
Yes.
can I add something?
Of course.
Okay. Because just now, Alison was talking about students in the future, and Vincent, and we all talk about consumers, customers. My question is, according to our topic, designs for the future, who are our target customers?
The future
Maybe people
generations.
think that it's very simple. I mean, whoever pays or whoever uses our service or product, they are our target customers. But let's think of this. Let's give you an example. We all went to schools. From the school's point of view, who are the target customer of schools? Naturally, we think students, because we have to educate them, or parents, because together with school, they have to educate the students, or the community or the nations, because in the future, all these students will become their citizens. They are all correct. But there is a group of customers that they don't even know that they are the target customers. They don't even know that they need something, and that is the future of the students. That means the schools, they have to train not only the students of today, they have to see ahead, to think ahead, what the students will need 10, or, in the future, whether they go to universities, they go to vocational school, or they just go right to the workforce. And this reminds me of Henry Ford. People ask him about car, He said, if I would ask my customer what they want, I would be looking for faster horses. So the thing is, I'm thinking, when we talk about design for the future, sometimes we have to design and put sustainability in our designs, because sometimes our target customers, our target customers today do not know that they would need this in the future. So that is why very important. When we do this design, we have to consider sustainability. Thank you.
I can't agree with you more. And I also like to reflect on Alison's saying, because the first time I hear her saying that all the new students entering into university, they would tell them that, okay, you're not going to use any new materials for your fashion collections. You need to use either remanufactured one or recycled one. The very first time I hear this, I said, oh, pretty bad. If I want to learn about fashion design, I think it's a very glamorous industry, and I want to use all kinds, whether it's textile materials or new kind of things that I can use. However, when I entered university and Alison told me that, okay, you're not going to use any new materials, I said it's a little bit bad. But after that, I reflect these questions again. Maybe it's very cool. It's very different. All the previous more mature designer, they have very abundant material resources, and then they design all the different kind of things. But like what I said, designers, their train is having design mindset. Design thinking, and then it's a part of problem-solving skills. And then if they use it right, and then if they use it well, it can show their talent, and then it's even better than anyone who are very abundant with resources. So that's a little bit of reflection by myself. And of course, Thomas' will is also very important, that design for the future, and then we need to have future generations in mind. Like in our organization, WWF, we have this Living Planet report. And then we find that during the past 40 years, 68% of the world's species has been extinct. It's very alarming to me. It's primarily one generation who has the efforts to kill 68% of the species. So of course, it's not fair to other species, and then it's not good in view of sustainability, because we need biodiversity. We need abundance of different species in order to balance whether it's on the planet or our living, like all the climate change, the extreme weather events that we face today is all because of an unbalanced world. So this is the kind of things that I think we need to be more mindful at. And I guess little practices that Aurelie and Vincent suggested are really very good. And I particularly like to pick up one point that Aurelie mentioned about, so you don't print out any presentation more, you use more virtual tools, visual aims. So how's your wills apart from your office work? I understand that because of COVID, the fashion walk is nearly not possible. So people start to use these virtual fashion shows or any virtual events. Do you have any experience of that, and how's your feeling about that?
Yeah, so since the pandemic, we used to go and visit our customer directly, like in Europe. So we had to find another way to approach them. So we use digital tools, such as YouTube, IG, or PowerPoint, and just doing presentation pre-recorded from our collection, so they can log in and just vision the collection itself. And also as a personal, then from Catwalk, we log in live and try to see what others are doing. Yeah.
So Thomas, do you have any experience, or what do you see as a benefit of we go digital or organize all these kind of virtual events?
Yes, thank you, Karen. To me, what is, actually, I always think that technology is the answer to many of our problems. And especially, I think of 5G. I think this would help us a lot. To give you an example, for example, we all know that China is very good with logistics and courier. Most of the courier company would guarantee you that once you press the to buy button, within 24 hours, although China is very big, within 24 hours, your goods will be in front of your doorsteps. That was 5 or 6 years ago. But do you know how long does it take now for the courier to deliver the goods that you need after you press the to buy button? 20 to 25 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not kidding you. 20 and 25 minutes after you press confirm buying button, the goods will be in front of your doorsteps. How can they do that? That is big data. Because with the big data, with your buyer profile, the computer would fairly accurately predict in this neighborhood how many units would be ordered within a certain time. So that's why 24 hours before, they would store enough quantity in the warehouse in the neighborhood. They don't know exactly who would buy this, but they know that in this neighborhood, 100 units will be consumed today. So once you press the button, the courier man just need to go to the, they don't even need to go to the warehouse. The robot from the warehouse would deliver the merchandise to the courier man. He just walk upstairs and deliver you the goods. Think of this. Before, you have to make more quantity so that you don't lose an order. Now you make as many as you need. The time that you need, near the place that you need. There is a lot of carbon footprint saved. that is one example of technology. So I think technology 5G would be the answer to many of our challenges. Thank you.
And I hope that Hong Kong can also have more talents and experts to help us move into this digital age. I understand that the food delivery is quite popular now, and then I would like to see how soon this fashion's delivery, like what you said, if I pat on a button and then 30 minutes after, I can get the clothes already in my door size. That's really looking forward to, and hope that in such a situations we can really use our resources more efficiently and effectively. So with that, I do see some questions from either our online community or from guests in-house. The first questions to Alison, this is a question for you. Do you see education as one of the most important tools to help designers become more sustainable? Are new generation designers stronger or weaker in contributing to sustainability?
I think in the future, if all students are taught in one particular way, which is automatically being responsible, then people will know no different. And of course, all of us, or most of us that work in the industry, have been through some form of education to get there, to become a designer. So I think if that's the only thing that you know, and that's the only process you know, then it can only be good for the future. The biggest problem we still have, and I know this is coming up as another panel, is that fashion education around the world is not consistent in this. So there are still challenges in educating the educators to be able to deliver the right content to students, and that's ongoing. So I hope that sort of changes. It has been changing, and I've seen a lot of change over the last 7 years. It's now, it's on the curriculum. Institutes recognise it's something they need to discuss, they need to talk about, and they need to get into the curriculum. But I think it's just still that challenge of educating the educators. And I'd suggest you watch the panel later, or I think it's later or tomorrow.
I think it's maybe it's today, right? The first
today,
panel.
yeah.
Yeah, good. I have another question, just following up on the technology side, but it's not so much on the consumer or the retail front. It talked about, or it asks, how is technology changing the traditional garment productions? It's back to the manufacturing side. So is virtual the future? Thomas, you'd like to add your views on how technology can help with the garment productions?
I think technology is already helping the garment industry already. For example, talking about the water. For example, in China, because my factories used to be in China, so I know, they put sensors on the pipes. So before the water goes out, they already know whether the water that is leaving your factory is within the standard that the government allowed. And also, there are a lot of technology that the government can use to monitor, to make sure that everyone is complying with the laws. So in this way, and also it's easier for people now to make water clean, so that they can recycle the water over and over again, so that there's no new water coming in, same thing as air. So technology is already helping. I think it will help us more and more.
Any views from Vincent or Aurelie regarding that? Okay. I guess we have a lot of audience from the production side. Another question is about, there is concern about reducing the production amount. And if that's the case, what about the people losing their jobs if there is lesser production volumes to be manufactured? So this, the question asks if we have any advice on this.
I can answer in there, Karen. I mean, one thing that's slowly happening and should be happening a lot more is fashion services. So fashion remanufacturing can actually be a service, and there's organisations like the Renewal Workshop are doing that for brands. They're remanufacturing the sort of, I'll call it waste from brands that can then be resold to other markets. Repairers, we've mentioned leasing companies, all these sort of fashion services. They'll grow, they'll definitely grow. And I bring back to the earlier point that, what we've learned most from the COVID-19 pandemic is that companies can diversify, companies can adapt. And they did it swiftly. A lot of companies went online in Australia when they'd never done that before. So, people are open to change. We just need to see that, you don't have to manufacture something brand new with new virgin resources every time. You can be looking to use existing waste. You can be looking to provide a fashion service. So I think they're definitely, the way forward.
Yeah, I still remember the very first year I was here in Fashion Summit. I have this panel with Marks & Spencer representative, and then I do throw one question to him, asking him whether there is possibility of setting up a remanufacture or repair corner in their shops to help consumers to extend the use of the garments. And I just throw out this question at that point of time because I feel like nowadays we don't treasure the clothing so much. And then even if it's a small damage, we'll throw it away, and then buying new clothing is so cheap. So we developed such a bad habit, and that's behind why I asked my guests at that point of time whether they considered setting up a repair corner. I'm very glad that they did really try out that, and then I understand that they already have a repair corner in some of their shops in UK. I haven't checked out in Hong Kong. Probably if it can be a company policy, that will be even better. So when we say the industry needs to rethink about your business models, we hear so much about whether it's consumers like the personality, or it's because of sustainability, or because of the lack of new resources. I don't think we can still use the old business model that we do mass productions, we run for efficiency, and then we aim at low cost, low price. Thomas, you agree with me?
Yes, Karen, I also think that technology would help us, and that would be the answer. To give you another example, once upon a time when China was using bamboo instead of paper, before paper was invented, if you look at history, at that time the Chinese was very worried, because with that speed we will run out of bamboo very soon. But of course, then later on with papers. And then with papers, people start to worry. With that speed that we are printing the books, very soon the trees would go extinct. Same thing as energy. If you remember about 18th, 19th century in London, the sky was smoky all the time because of the Industrial Revolution, because of the coal. People think that, you won't be able to see your fingers in front of you if that goes continue. And the coal would go extinct as well. But of course we know that then comes petroleum, oil. And then in the 70s, we worried that the oil would be exhausted. But every time with technology helps us to solve the problem. But to answer your question by the audience, what I worry more is that the low-tech and low-paid jobs would go more to the developing countries. And that way, they won't be able to develop, although it's helping some of the families, helping them to put food on the table. But we need a better solution. Thank you.
With that, we have an audience asking you and me, in what way do you think the SDGs implies to different tiers of the fashion industry?
Sorry?
in what way do you think the SDGs implies to different tiers of the fashion industry?
I think if we look at the fashion industry, actually all the 17 SDGs applies, but in different priorities, and depending on which supply chain we are talking about, the importance might be different. If you ask most people, they will think that maybe SDG 12, responsible consumption and production would be more important. But as you said, actually 14 and 15, life underwater and life on land, they are actually very important. Because if you're talking about animal fiber, if you're talking about plant fiber, and even if you're talking about chemical fibers, if we don't do things right, the chemicals would just become microfibers and go into the oceans and damage all the ocean lives. So they're all interlinked. And so we cannot talk in silos.
Yeah, that's very true. The fashion industry or the garments and textile industry traditionally like to see them as different tiers, you as suppliers and then me as customers. But I guess we need to really have a new thinking. Still remember the charts showing that everybody think of partnership could be likely to achieve. And I do agree that collaboration, partnership is very, very important. Think of the fashion brands, the big one, all sign up with the UNFCCC's the 2030 goals to reduce 30% of their greenhouse gas. And I'm pretty sure that they are not just talking about their own operations emissions. They are talking about contributions to the fashion industry. And in order for them to really achieve that, every tiers along the supply chains need to contribute. And again, just working out from your own four walls, I don't see you have great success in a sense that you need to really work with your upstream suppliers and your downstream customers, whether it's redesigning new things or is streamlining some of the manufacturing process or agreeing to some new plans in order to drastically reduce the carbon emissions. So I do see that the SDG all applies to different tiers, and yet the tiers, different tiers or along the whole fashion supply chains need to work together and have the same visions to achieve it and contribute your resources, contribute your efforts to achieving them. I have one more questions about, well, everybody can answer it, not limited to Alison, but it is asked, how do we re-educate the consumer to change their expectations from product being immediately available and be cheap cost to order-based and more sustainable that may increase cost? What role does design play in this?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things that we could do actually is point out to people a price per wear. So if people or if consumers realise that it only costs me, so many cents to wear this garment for 3 years at 2 times a month, that could look quite good value to the consumer. So I think a price per wear strategy or approach is a really, really good avenue actually to explore. The other thing I'd say is that actually there have been various schemes, and I've seen them here in Australia, such as there's an organisation called Afterpay, which allows you to pay for something over a period of 4 different payments as you buy the product. So there's lots of these sort of, I will call them short finance schemes that allows people to buy more expensive products, and they're aligned to specific shops. But it's been a hugely popular scheme, and it was something that I was concerned about in terms of low socioeconomic markets. But as somebody who worked for a charity organisation pointed out to me, those schemes are really important to people who are on in that low socioeconomic pool, so to speak. So, I mean, there are lots of different approaches like that that have been employed by retailers to help consumers buy better products. But I just think we need to point out the real value to consumers about why a particular product costs a particular price.
Any contributions from my guest speaker on stage? how do we educate or re-educate our consumers to be more sustainable?
We need to think about the interesting ideas and more interactive with the consumers. Just look at the recent example, Vogue has initiated the concept of upcycling with John Galliano and Tomo Koizumi. So you can use so different way by talk, by exhibitions, by project, and get the consumer involved, slowly educate them.
Yeah, using our digital platforms to interact with our potential customer and be able to get attention from them.
And I think a consumer actually very interested about actually what designer does, what's behind the story behind the product.
They feel involved. They feel a part of it.
Right.
To me, I think we have to understand and accept that the world is different now than from before. For example, 10 or 20 years ago, a marketing department can make an advertisement, and they can run the same advertisement for 1 year or at least 8 months. But now, on average, you have to change the advertisement 6 or sometimes 4 weeks. Not only that, you cannot just live with one advertisement. Depending on your target groups and the social media that you put your advertisement, normally you have multiple advertisement. That is around the same idea. So the world is changing. So even to educate the customers, we have to educate ourselves first. It is the mindset that is very important. I would say that don't just look at the behavior, change the mindset. Thank you.
So thank you very much for the sharing and then valuable comments from Alison online and then my 3 guests on stage here. We are coming to a close of the panel, and then if you have more questions, I'm sure that my guest speaker would like to answer you or to interact with you afterwards. So thank you very much for attending these panels. Hope it's useful to you, and then you get a lot of new ideas and then new practices that you can adopt right away. So right now, I guess I'll pass back the stage to the MC, or perhaps shall we have a group photo?
Yeah, sure.
Together with Alison.
Thank you so much. And I would like to, please remain on stage and let's take a picture together.
Do we stand up or
So please
just
remain seated first. And then we will have another picture. One step forward, please. Let's join together for another group photo. One step forward, let's have another picture together.
Stand up.
Yeah, one step forward.
Okay.
Okay, also with Alison online. Thank you so much. Another group photo, please.
This way. So that.
Which way?
Okay.
Thank you so much for bringing us such an insightful discussion. A big smile to the camera center, please.